Allie with Potomac Beads. Join me in this video creating the Rendezvous necklace. Work on your coiling and your simple wire working skills while doing a basic strung necklace. It's a return back to the basics, but for many of you, it might be a great way to practice making those really perfect coiled eye pins. Gather up your materials, and if you happen to get the box for February, the Best Bead Box, all the materials are in there for you. So to start out, again, if you have the box, grab your supplies. You're going to be making simple coiled eye pins. So we're really going to be practicing that basic skill of doing the coiled eye pins. I have here the Potomac crystal drops in the 13 by 18 millimeter and some of my head pins. Now, whether or not you want to include little seed beads at the end or at the top, you can do so. I'm going to put a little seed bead at the bottom just for an added little flair. And then after we learn how and do these main components, we're going to go in with our rondelles and our rounds and put those on head pins as well. Once they are all on head pins, then we're going to string our necklace, which has an awesome clustering effect when it's held up. So I have my head pins right here. And again, on mine, I'm just going to put a simple, just to make it hang a little bit longer, one of my 11 seed beads on the top and the bottom of my head pin. You want to have 3 pliers. A needle nose pliers or a flat nose pliers. You can use a bent one like this or straight. You want to make sure you have your round nose pliers and then a nice cutters. I'm going to go in with my needle nose pliers first, and I'm going to take my wire and hold my head pin, leaving just a tiny bit of space, almost 1/8 of an inch or a little less. Hold on to my head pin and press my bead down, and I'm going to take that plier and turn the wire with the pliers and make a 90-degree angle there. Inside that 90-degree angle then, I'm going to put my round nose pliers. I want my round nose pliers, if you're looking at it from your perspective, straight out from your chest is going to come that wire. So when I hold it here, from my perspective, straight up and down, you're going to see it. But if you're looking at it from your perspective, you're not going to, because that wire is straight behind those round nose pliers. You want to see one jaw stacked over top of the other. Take the wire over top of that top jaw until it touches on the other side. From there, you're going to switch from that top jaw to the bottom jaw of those round nose pliers. That can be done in one of 2 ways. You can either take your piece completely off the top jaw and move it to the bottom jaw, or while it is on the round nose pliers and it's on the top jaw there, you can open up your hands and rotate them just a simple 45-degree, which will switch that onto the bottom of that jaw. Take that wire then and go back to that 90-degree, bending the wire back around the plier and stopping. That's going to get you, and if you need to straighten up, you can a little bit, that's going to get you a nice eye pin. The eye pin is the loop there. Sometimes you'll go in and you'll cut off the eye pin so that you don't have any extra wire. I would suggest, if you have extra wire, always to coil your eye pin, especially if you're using an eye pin or a head pin that is going to be less than about 21 to 20 gauge. If you cut it here, you have the chance that your wire, and we're using Beadalon 49 strand here wire, will possibly escape through that hole. Instead, what we're going to do is hold our little eye pin here, and I always like to describe this as my man's head. I'm going to hold from his nose up, so I don't want the pliers going over the crossover point there, and I'm going to wrap the wire or a scarf around his neck, starting from the top of the neck, working down toward the bottom of the neck. Generally speaking, I leave enough room for 3 coils. There's no correct or incorrect amount. You just need to make sure you do more than 1 coil in order for it to stay put. From here, I'm going to go in with my pliers and my cutters. You can see the flat side of the cutters is facing down toward the project, and the V side is facing up. That's going to get my closest cut to my project. Go in there and cut off that extra little wire that may be left and put that off to the side. Hopefully you're working on a nice bead board or a bead mat, that way it grabs onto that little ending. Always make sure to cover it with your hand as you're cutting that wire so it doesn't pop up and hit you in the face. From here, you can take your needle nose pliers or your flat nose pliers, bent flat nose, and just pinch in that little edge that's left on that head pin. You now have your coiled eye pin, which will go ahead and string through as we create and do the design. I'm going to start by doing the other 2 of my drops because I want 3 on my necklace, or you can do a single drop on the necklace and then do a pair of earrings as well with the head pins that are provided. After I go ahead and do these drops, I'm going to gather out my supplies and add to the design. So I have for my supplies some 6mm rose quartz. I have my 11 or 80 seed beads. I have some 4mm Czech glass in that nice Rosaline color. And then I also have some Rondelles in a 3x5 in that purple swirl. In each one of my collections here, in between my drops, we're going to have approximately 6 beads that are coiled and on eye pins like this. When you do your smaller beads, you're just going to notice as you go in and string them on. Add one here. You can see some of them have little seed beads at the end, some don't, kind of up to you. I'm going to add my seed bead, go through and put on my drop. I'm going to add a seed bead above. You don't have to, it's up to you. Hold that down on my needle nose pliers, or sorry, on my fingers, and then grab my needle nose pliers. Again, leaving just a little bit of space. Bend that back 90 degrees. Grab my round nose pliers, stacking one jaw on top of the other, so that way I see that wire coming straight out from the back. So you can see the view from top down. I'm going to take the wire and go over top of the round nose pliers till it hits on the other side. And then I'm going to switch from the top jaw, opening slightly, to the bottom jaw of the pliers. Take that extra wire back 90 degrees. You start with 90 degrees and you end with 90 degrees. Go ahead and hold that man's head and start wrapping the scarf around his neck. After you have approximately 3 wraps or so, and the more you do it, the better that you'll get. You want those coiled wraps to be nice and tight around the neck and also down in a line, so you have the first one as close to the head as possible, and then the second goes below, the third, and so on. If you have some extra room there and you have plenty of wire to coil, go ahead and coil in that extra wire. Not going to hurt at all. It's just going to make for a longer head pin piece. So I'm going to go in and continue adding in a bunch of my little head pins here, gearing up to string them all onto the design. So at this point, I've gone to town with my coiling here, and I have a ton of my 4mm Czech glass coiled. I have a ton of my Rondelles coiled as well, and then I have the 3 coiled eye pins of my crystals. Now I have this laying out almost on a bead mat style, and if you have a bead board, you can certainly lay it out on there too to get the idea. But generally speaking, when I'm designing and trying to figure out what I want my necklace to look like, before picking up my stringing wire, and this is beading cable is what it's going to be called, I usually start out with my biggest bead because that's going to be the focus of the design and the focus of the necklace. Starting with the largest bead, I know I have 3 that I want to work with. Then I picked up my rose quartz, and I have 3 of, or my 6mm rose quartz. I have 3 on the sides, 1 each in the middle between my set of 3 crystals here. From there, I'm going to decide how I want to cluster these little spacer beads that I did. So maybe 3 there, 3 here on this side, maybe 2 there, clustered before my drop, 2 more on the other side, grab in my rondelles. So you can see I'm kind of piling them up next to where I think they'll go, because I want the necklace to be even in design, but not too matching. Now these purple swirl, I am going to be a little bit picky toward the middle and make sure that I have 2 that look semi the same as I'm going in and creating. So I'm going to add 2 of these here. And if I need to do a couple more turns and add a couple more clusters, I can certainly do that as well. But I think I have my pieces about where I want them to be here, with my biggest cluster group as a group there of 5. From here, I'm going to add in some of my smaller beads. So these are my 8 OC beads in that cream luster, and then I also have some 11 OC beads that I'll be working with. Generally speaking, I don't lay those out when they're small in the design. What I'll do is just string a little portion to begin, to see about a pattern or a set that I want to do along the side of the necklace. So here I've strung already on my cord, and I've got to get out my bead stopper here. And I've strung a little bit on my necklace to lead me up to the beginning of the design. Having some 11-0, 5-11-0 seed beads, then 1-8, 1-11, and one of either my crystal rounds or my crystal rondelles. And that's the pattern that I have for what's going to be the back 3 inches of the necklace. From here, I'll start to add the middle and then decide if I need to add more on the end. I tend to use a bead stopper and not put on my clasp right away in case I do want to add any to each end. I'm going to continue with my design now, picking up the end of my thread, adding on prior to that a couple of my 8-0s on the sides, and they're a nice off color. So I'm going to pick up one of those off color, then one of my 11s. You'll notice because I'm used to working with seed beads a ton, I tend to use the wire almost like a needle. On goes one of my 6mm rounds, another 11, and another 8. And that's going to be the start to my pattern. In between there, I'm going to do 3 of my 11-0 seed beads, then my cluster grouping, 3 more 11, and continue with that groups of 3 seed bead the whole way along the center of the design. So when creating and making and doing simple strung necklaces like this, after I have it strung, even before I put the clasp on, I like to look and see how the beads fall at the length that I have chosen. So I'll hold it up to a mirror and I look at it and say, yep, this is the desired length that I want to. I like the way that it looks. I like the pattern I have. And then I'll go in to do the ends, showing the pattern that I ended up with and the pattern that I have. So I did the 5-11-0 seed beads, followed by 1-8, one of more 11, and then alternated between my smaller Czech glass bead. Then what I did was I put in some of my rose quartz, some more of the 11-8, 3 11-0 seed beads, a cluster of my head pins, as well as 2 of the rondelles on the side. Then another grouping here with my rose quartz, another grouping here with rondelles on the side and 2 beads. Went into the next section here and did my 4mm bead on the side with 4 of my hang down little pieces and my crystal in the middle between 2 and 2 of those. As I got to the center then, I repeated the same of my quartz in the 6mm, then did a cluster again of 4 beads with the rondelles on each side, did my little middle crystal with the 11-0s sitting it apart, and then repeated the same thing on the other side. Now that I'm happy with my project and I like the way that it's sitting, it's about 19 inches, I'm going to get ready to add my clasp and my closure using, again, picking up my bent needle nose pliers here along with my crimp beads and my clasp. Once you get ready to finish off the end of your piece, I added 1/8 seed bead to the end, and then I have my crimp tube or crimp bead, which is a 2x2mm, working with this 0.018 bead-along 49 strand wire. And then I'm going to put on one side of my clasp. Now my crystals will turn a little bit, so I don't have a right and left side of my necklace. If you do, you want to make sure to put the lobster, generally speaking, is on the right side. I'm going to go in and go back through that crimp bead as well as my 8mm or 8/0 seed bead. Grab my needle nose pliers. You can use a crimping pliers if you want to. I prefer and I like the hold better of the bent needle nose pliers. I'm going to flatten out that crimp tube, making sure that my wires are sitting next to one another. When it comes to the second side of the necklace, you're going to treat it the same way, adding the 8/0 seed bead, then your crimp tube. This time make sure that you're pushing the crimp tube as well as that 8/0 seed bead down next to your project. Pull all of your extra thread, or extra wire rather, and you should have enough of the beading cable wire left if you're not making your necklace super long, and you have supplies to make the necklace pretty long if you want to. And you're going to have enough to use for another project. After flattening out the crimp tube, we're going to go in simply then and trim off the wire right below to finish up the necklace. Thanks so much for joining me in making this fun rendezvous necklace. It's a nice flashback to some of the basic beading skills that you may need a little fine tuning on or need a little refreshment, as well as a great thing to use up some of your past bead box materials or things that you just have laying around in your stash. As always, if you want to check out the bead box, make sure to check the links below to shop with us online, as well as for any additional supplies. Remember also, comment below, let us know your order, your pattern, and don't forget to post your pictures in our Facebook group for the Best Bead Box, as well as the Facebook group for beading and jewelry making. As always, if you haven't yet, hit that little subscribe button so you don't miss anything from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy the techniques that were learned and the new necklace that you may have, the Rendezvous necklace.